Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teach University. And in this lecture today, we're going to be discussing the psychology of selling. And I think this is a very important lecture because the topic of sales could be very overwhelming, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs and salespeople, as there's so many different marketing and sales strategies out there. I want to really focus at the heart of selling, which is the psychology of why it is consumers make decisions on what products and services they buy. We're going to be diving into that a little bit in this lecture. So I want to start with a quote. Whoa, skipped ahead here. Let's go back to Daniel Pink here, who says that every circumstance in which we try to move others, by definition, involves another human being. Yet in the name of professionalism, we often neglect the human element and adopt a stance that's abstract and distant. So what happens with sales, and I'm guilty of this, being in real estate, is that we tend to be very transactional when it comes to sales. We focus so much on closing a deal, getting that commission check, getting that sale, making profit. We forget that we're dealing with other human beings. We tend to forget that. And human beings, if you haven't noticed, are very emotional creatures, and we make decisions in order to satisfy deeply rooted physical and psychological needs. So it's important then that rather than focusing on the transaction itself, recognize you're dealing with other people. And when dealing with other people, you have to understand how it is that they make decisions. And you want to craft your sales and marketing strategy around satisfying these needs and desires that your consumers and customers have. Again, we're dealing with human beings here. So it's important not to be fixated with the transaction and the sale, but on learning how to deal with people and developing relationships with people in order to satisfy these needs. So with sales, again, this is from The Hangover, one of my favorite movies, we tend to overcomplicate sales. And there's so many different strategies, and we obsess with algorithms and data and over obsessing with, really these different strategies and how to be able to sell. At the end of the day, it's about dealing with people and relationships, and again, addressing these deeply rooted desires that all of us have that need satisfying. And again, it's keeping it simple, and it's all about relationships and building relationships with your customer base. And large companies and Fortune 500 companies are able to do this all the way down to that local pizza shop that you may go to. What they have in common is that they've developed relationships with their customers. And they do that, I think, not just through relationships, but through psychology and really been able to satisfy underlying needs. So, what I want you to think about, and again, you can leave a comment below and you can give me some background on what it is the last item that you purchased and why. Maybe it could have been a cup of coffee from Starbucks, which you're going to be using as an example here in a moment. It could have been a large ticket item like a house or a car, whatever that may be. Think about the last item you purchased and why. Why is it that you purchased that particular item? And you may have a number of reasons why that's the case. But underneath it all, or underneath that answer that you may provide, is that most of the decisions we make, including our purchases, are based on how the end result would make us feel. More specifically, we make decisions on what we purchase based on how that product or service makes us feel. Again, when it comes to like goal setting, for example, we have particular goals because there's a specific feeling we would like to have associated with achieving that goal. When it comes to purchasing a specific product or service, we buy that product or service based on how that would make us feel. And again, it's all about feelings. We make decisions in order to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. So a lot of the products and services that we buy are designed to solve a particular problem. And again, this is what entrepreneurs, the really good ones, understand, is that they've developed products and services. They craft them in such a way to satisfy consumer demands and needs, or to fix a particular problem that's impacting consumers in this particular industry. So when we look at Starbucks, for example, Starbucks is a fascinating case study because there's so many different coffee chains out there and coffee shops: Dunkin' Donuts, Panera Bread, Einstein Bagel, Joffrey's, whole bunch of different brands. But yet so many people flock to Starbucks, and everywhere you go, and almost every block you come across and you drive through, you see a Starbucks. Why is that? Well, it's really all about branding. Howard Schultz, what really inspired him to create Starbucks was when he visited Europe when he was younger. He was inspired by the European cafes that he would frequent during his stay there. And what he noticed about these cafes is that they were places not just where you went to get coffee, but it was a place where you would socialize, to do business. It was really a hangout. It was not just coffee that you were buying the experience of being a part of something. And I think that's really how Starbucks has been able to brand themselves, that when you buy that cup of coffee from Starbucks and you hold that cup of coffee in your hand with that logo, it really makes you feel a certain way that you're a part of something. When you go into a Starbucks, what do you see? You see people socializing, you see people working on their laptops, creating. And I think the deep rooted psychological needs there is that we all yearn to share and express ourselves. And that's one of the big reasons why people go to Starbucks. It's a way to socialize and be a part of something. And that's how Starbucks has been able to brand themselves. Now, going to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I've used this in a number of my different lectures, a lot of the purchasing decisions we make are based on satisfying these needs. And when you look at the basic needs in the bottom of the pyramid, the business that I'm in real estate is designed is to satisfy the very basic need of shelter. I'm in the business of helping people buy and sell homes. So I satisfy or help people satisfy these basic needs. Okay. And then, of course, we have these other higher level needs like intimate relationships, friends, the need of belonging. Again, going back to Starbucks here, they satisfy not just the basic needs, but also psychological needs. Where when you buy a Starbucks coffee, subconsciously, whether you realize it or not, thanks to their marketing, that you become part of something. And that's very powerful. And Apple does the same thing. Apple has been able to brand themselves when you buy a MacBook or an iPhone, you're a part of something, you're connected to something. And again, that's great marketing on their part. And then, of course, on the top of that pyramid is self actualization. Now, going back to Apple, what really inspired Steve Jobs, or one of his goals in creating Apple and creating Apple computers, was that he wanted his products to be used as a way or as a way for people to use their creativity, or really, to put it another way, as an extension of their creativity. Again, achieving that self-actualization or achieving one's full creative potential. And I think he was able to really discover this during his visit to India where he studied Buddhism. And I think that during his travels there and his stay there that he really discovered how to use his inner intuition to be able to develop Apple computers and how it's become the company that it is today, because he understood the needs of what people were looking for. I think he understood consumer needs before anybody else realized what they needed when it came to personal computers. He recognized the need for consumers, that they needed personal computers before anybody ever really realized they needed this particular product or service. So when it comes then to how we make decisions, when it comes to the products and services we buy, you think about most of our habits. 95% of our habits are totally unconscious. And our habits and behaviors are formed through repetition. We think and act a certain way enough times. Eventually, that becomes cemented in our personality, thus, that creates our personal reality and impacts the decisions that we make. And advertisers are masters at using this way of how we form habits as a way to advertise to consumers. So advertisers take advantage of human psychology by using repetition and emotion by selling their products to satisfy deeply rooted physical and psychological needs. So the best advertisers, again, use human psychology to their advantage by using repetition and emotion. You look at some of the best commercials that you remember. Why do you remember them? Because of the emotion that you felt when you saw that commercial. And a great example are the commercials that we've seen that help abused animals. You know, they play the heartfelt music and they show animals in cages and that were neglected or abused. And obviously, the goal of these commercials is to get people to donate to these charities. And they're masters at this because they use human emotion. You can't help but want to give money to these charities because of the not just the repetition of these charities showing these commercials over and over again, but the emotion that these commercials elicit. You know, the images of animals in cages, of being abused, the music. You know, advertisers know how to do this. The good ones know how to do this when it comes to using repetition and emotion. And a number of different companies and industries use this sort of tactic. So a great example of this is Outback Steakhouse. And actually, as of the making of this lecture, I was watching the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it was between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And During one of the games, during the commercial breaks, Outback was playing a commercial. And that commercial played, I'm telling you, I think probably well over 100 times throughout the entire course of the game. They just kept playing it over and over again. And the funny thing is, later on that weekend, my parents and I actually mentioned to them they were hungry, they want to go to a restaurant. I'm like, hey, why don't we just go to Outback? And I didn't even realize that subconsciously I thought of Outback and to go out to eat. And the reason was because of that commercial, because of the repetitive nature of it. And the way they framed it was through repetition. Anybody that was watching it, the moment they thought of food or thinking of steak or whatnot, they thought of Outback. And again, when you look at the Outback commercials, obviously you've seen them before, I'm sure. The photos of the bloomin' onion and the sizzling steak on the grill, and of course all the fixings with mashed potatoes and all that good stuff, and people socializing. These are very powerful images and video that they use to be able to entice consumers to visit their restaurant. Now, are there other steakhouses out there? Obviously, there are. Are there ones that are better? Of course. But when it comes to Outback, they developed that specific niche, and they really reinforce that through repetition and emotion. When you see the image of the steak and you see people socializing, and you see this enough times associated, with the restaurant of Outback, then that really is very powerful, and you'll be enticed to want to visit Outback and go out to eat at their restaurants. So again, it's all about repetition and emotion. And when it comes then to sales itself and how we can put all this together as a strategy, is that when it comes to success in sales, it's 5% strategy, 95% mindset. Again, it's psychology. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have a positive outlook, if you don't believe in yourself when it comes to your abilities, and you don't, or if you aren't receptive to new ideas and possibilities when it comes to your business and how you interact with your customers, then you'll more than likely fail, regardless of the sales and marketing strategy that you have to grow your business. But the most important thing, if there's anything that I want you to get out of this lecture, is that the best salespeople don't sell. Rather, they focus on building relationships with like-minded people while adopting a positive mindset that brings them consistent results over time. From Starbucks and Apple to a local pizza shop that maybe you go to in your neighborhood. We'll use that as an example. That pizza shop has probably been there for years. And I actually, in one of my old neighborhoods in New Jersey that I would visit from time to time, the pizza shop that has been there since I was in high school is still there. Why? Because they've been able to develop a relationship with their customers where they're willing to go again and again. And then when you think about large companies like Starbucks or Apple, they've built a large customer base because they develop a relationship with their customers through the quality of their products, through customer service, and through the experience that you get with visiting a Starbucks barista or store or an Apple store. It's the experience that you get when you go in there that you feel like you're a part of something. So when working with your customers and whatever business you're in, you want to get in the habit of building relationships that over time can yield very positive results, not just financially, but people that you can grow with and you can work with and become friends with. Because ultimately, you want to do business with people that you get along with and you like. And when you really take that into consideration, the psychology of selling, the importance of relationships, and how at the end we're all human beings and we all have specific needs, then that'll really get you one step closer to crafting a strategy and a mindset that can help you solve consumer needs and become a much better salesperson.